Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this, our series of Enemy of the State, hosted by Maskani ya Taifa and Nisisi, Kenya. Please remember that you can join us on our YouTube channel. This will be available after this. You can also follow the Maskani Conversations on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @Maskani254. You can also find us on Facebook, and of course, you can find us on Google+. We've been having a series of these conversations with some of the leading people within the civil society, talking to us about the work that they do, but most importantly, we get to know them a little bit better as compared to knowing them and only seeing them when, as a lot of people say, only when they're doing press conferences or in meetings in big hotels. So the idea is that we are able to have a conversation as you as members of the public, you're able to engage, you're able to ask some of the questions that you may have regarding the activities that we are involved in within the civil society sector. And at the same time, we get to know these individuals as human beings. We get to know what is their interest, what are their interests. We get to know what their hobbies are. We get to know what motivates them. We get to know what their journey has been to be where they are within this sector, and the impact that the work that they're doing has on our country in terms of social justice, human rights, policy development, governance, anti-corruption activities, and things of that nature. This afternoon, we are joined by a rather accomplished, and if you will allow me to say that, accomplished at a young age, lady who is, I'm going to give her a minute to introduce herself, has worked a lot in the area of social justice, looking at issues of women rights, looking at issues of children, and now working in the cross-section of issues of human rights, social justice, issues of governance, democracy, and ensuring that as a country we are living true to the spirit of our constitution that as Kenyans we promulgated in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce Grace Maingi. Grace, welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
I don't know if you have been on a Hangout before of this nature.
Actually, I haven't. This is my first.
Oh, great. It's fascinating to have you here, and we are really looking forward to getting to know who you are better. And maybe that's a good place for us to start. Introduce yourself to Kenyans. Who is Grace Maingi? What are your interests, inspirations, hobbies?
Okay. Well, I'm a human rights lawyer. I've been working in this sector for about 13 years now. I enjoy, the regular things that people enjoy. I enjoy reading. I enjoy traveling. I like swimming. And yeah, being with friends, watching movies. Yes, me and series, it's very hard to separate us. So basically, yeah, that's what I do for fun. I am inspired about the work that I do. I just have a passion for it in terms of making sure that we can have a better future, for future generations. And I found myself in this sector, and I've never looked back since. And I enjoy it thoroughly. I don't think I would be able to practice law in any other form in terms of going to court or, doing commercial deals. That doesn't drive me. But this work in terms of social justice, it really sets me on fire. So I really enjoy it. I enjoy the work that I do. And yeah, I really like trying to see how to improve people's lives.
So which TV series are you watching?
Right now, actually, seriously, okay. I'm watching Suits season 3, and I'm hooked on Scandal season 3 as well.
Oh, yes. You and everybody else, I guess.
Yeah, so yeah.
Or maybe you should watch Veep. I like that one.
Veep.
Veep.
Oh, I don't know.
VEEP.
Okay, okay,
It's a lot of fun.
okay. I'll check
But
it out.
just talking about, you've talked about being, being a lawyer, and you wouldn't see yourself doing this work anywhere else. And you have quite an impressive educational background. Gone to some of what people would call some of the best schools in the country. Could you talk a little about your school days? What are the memories? What are your memories of Hospital Hill and Rusinga and those kinds of schools?
Well, primary school, I was in Hostel Hill Primary, the best primary school that is in Kenya, by the way. So I really enjoyed primary school. It was great, made a lot of good friends who I'm still friends with now. Education-wise, good foundation that were given in that school, even in terms of principles, in terms of discipline, and it had a good balance. It had a good balance between books and sports. A lot of the swimming leading lights have come from Hostel Hill Primary. So
that might explain your swimming, your liking of swimming, doesn't it?
Definitely. So primary school was really enjoyable. High school was a bit of a culture shock because I went to a very strict Catholic school. So I went to Precious Blood Reduta, very strict, but also very great in terms of instructive in discipline. Books obviously was, education was really emphasized. And so me doing A-levels at Rusinga was again another culture shock because I went from a very strict school to a school that was a lot more relaxed. But Rusinga was fun. Still in touch with a number of people I went to school there, so that was fun as well. And yeah, basically that was cool. That was I thank my parents actually for believing in me and giving me that opportunity to be able to go to those kind of schools and be able to have that kind of exposure. I think it definitely has contributed to who I am today.
Actually, that was going to be my next question. In terms of very balanced primary school, as you've talked about, in terms of both academics and sports, extracurricular activities, I think they are called these days. And what just sort of, and then in a very strict Catholic school, I'm sure that when you are in Precious Blood, it might be different from what it is today, but and then to Rusinga School, and of course on to your higher education. What would you say is your most memorable experience? What is it about that education? But is there anything about that education background that has molded you and interested you into what you're doing?
I would say definitely, if I look at my high school, being able to be in an environment whereby religion was really taken as key in terms of observance of rules, observance of leadership, definitely instilled a great respect for leadership and for the observance of rules and time, and being able to respect time and being able to understand that there's a hierarchy in everything that you do. So high school really instilled that in terms of, you have to do certain things at a certain time, regardless of whether you liked it or not. You had to do it. So that was, I would say, instructive in terms of how I am now. Primary school, definitely in terms of an understanding that yes, there's books, but also there was always time for us to go for school trips. There was always time for us to have time as with our families. Family was very important in primary school. So that also, has molded me to be who I am today, or that sort of perspectives that I have. But I think in high school, we were exposed to the community around the school, where people were highly disadvantaged in terms of, it was in a relatively poor area. So you could see the disparities in life, and the school tried to instill as much as possible equality. So would all carry the same sort of jam, the same sort of biscuits, to have that sort of equality instilled in us. But but by it doing that, it shows you that there was true inequality, you know. And I think that showed me early on in life that, you know, we're not all equal, and people are different levels in life, and, you know, so that also made me feel, you know, well, why can't, you know, in a very naive way, why can't we all be equal? Why can't we all have the same sort of a thing? Yeah.
Oh, great. So, you know, there's the issue of punctuality. I deeply apologize that this has started a little later than we anticipated. Technical challenges got in the way. The issue of equality, I think that is actually a good point, and there are some other areas that we're going to get into as we continue with this conversation. But I know that Wanjiro had a question that she wanted to talk to you about, to ask. Wanjiro Kanyiha, are you there? Wanjiro Kanyiha, you're there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Welcome, Grace. Hi.
Hi.
And welcome. Karibu sana. All right. So my question is that you define yourself as a feminist, and you're a mother and a career woman. How do you balance these very important responsibilities?
Okay.
Can I, Grace, just before, sorry, I will remind you the question should you forget it. I just want to appeal to everybody on the Hangout to please switch off your phones. It is interfering with the Hangout. So if you could kindly switch off your phone, not silent, but switch off. That would be very helpful. Thank you, Grace. Now back to the feminism.
Yes, okay. Let me start off by saying this. Unfortunately, in Kenya especially, but generally in the world, feminism is seen as a dirty word. You know, people hear feminist and they think, oh, you know, this wrinkled lady who's just mean and is very annoyed and has pent up anger. But that's not what feminism is about. You know, feminism is believing in equality, is believing in the need to fight for equal rights or equal access for both men and women, and that's why I say that I'm a feminist. Now, academically, there are different forms of feminism, and the feminism that has been, you know, traditionally grown from a South sort of perspective, that, you know, we don't want neo-colonialists to tell us how to think as women. But for me, feminism is just believing in the right for people to have equality as men and women. So being a feminist for me, that's what it means. I mean, I believe that regardless of whether you're a man or woman, yes, you have different abilities, but you should still be given equal access to what you need to do or what you want to do. So if boys are going to school, why shouldn't girls go to school as well? And for me, feminism is not about replacing men. It's not about trying to be on top of men or being better than men. Far from that. It's about acknowledging our differences, but also respecting those differences and respecting the need for us to allow equality and equal access. So
the area that I think, if I understood what Wanjiro was asking correctly, it's also about your balance. You know, how you're able to balance that. You know, you as a feminist, and I think you're giving a good explanation around feminism and being a mother, being a career woman. You know, and actually, you know, I'm you know, at a young age.
Okay, how you balance? Okay, everything is actually by the grace of God. And you have to be able to understand the different roles that you have. So I take my parenting role very seriously. So there is a point in time when my work life has to come to an end, and I have to put my children first. And as I grow older, I realize the need to do that more. So like, I won't work on Saturdays, I won't work on Sundays. In the evening, I'll try as much as possible not to work. to dedicate a specific time with my kids so that I can help them, just spend time with them, quality time, help them with their homework, that sort of a thing. So as much as possible now, I try to have a good work life, social life kind of balance. And there's certain things that I won't be able to do. And I still try to make people to understand that, I'm a mother and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't need to make apologies for it. I can't make breakfast meetings because I have to drop my kids in school. And that shouldn't be held against me, And as I've grown older, I've realized the need to slow down a bit more in terms of the 24-hour working. And so I'm trying. It's still a balancing act. I don't think anyone ever has it down to a T, but it's about realizing that you have important roles. So for me, my kids are my most important role, as opposed to my job. My kids come first, and these are future Kenyans that I'm molding. So I need to be there to mold them right before I go and try and change, the world or change Kenya for the better. So it calls for a lot of personal sacrifice also to your own personal time. So I'm still in school, so balancing school and the kids and work, it calls for that sort of a balance, but also knowing your limits. So there are times I just take time off from my kids, from my work, just to rest by myself. So it's about getting that balance and knowing how to do it.
I think, all of us a lot of us, let me say, are still trying to find the work-life balance. It's good to hear that it's not, it is not a struggle we are in alone. But I know that Elvis Mugeni also had a question and an area of exploration around the issue that you had actually started talking about around feminism and people's perception of it. Elvis, are you there?
Peter, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Grace, how are you?
Fine.
All right. Now, whenever the word feminism is mentioned, it evokes all manner of varying emotions and reactions. So what would feminism as? And when did you become a feminist? And how has that informed your career choice?
I like that. When did I become a feminist? Okay. Like I said, in terms of people's perception of feminism, it's very negative, and even in Kenya, people's perception of a professional or independent or a successful woman is seen as a threat to men. But I think it's just, unfortunately, a stereotype that people like to perpetuate, because you can still be a successful professional woman and have a lot of respect for men. And it doesn't mean just because you're professional and you're progressive that you have no respect for men. So in terms of when I became a feminist, I think I've always been. Probably I just realized the term in adulthood. But like when I was growing up at home, there were no chores for boys and chores for girls. So I have 3 older brothers and a younger sister, and my brothers know how to cook. Okay, they might get annoyed that I'm saying this, but like my brother knows how to make fantastic mandazis. So the work was divided equally. So I would do the dishes, someone else would cook, someone else would clean the house. So I didn't grow up knowing that boys are different from girls. We were all the same, and our roles were the same. So it's now later on in life that when you're reading about things and getting exposed, when people are saying these are feminists, and I realized, oh yes, I am a feminist and I believe in this work. And the realization that I needed to do a lot more women's rights work came. I had done quite a bit of work in just basic human rights, but I felt that there was so much negativity or misunderstanding around women's rights work that I just needed to get in there and see what it was all about. So I went into that sector, did it for a couple of years before making the decision to really go back to broader governance work. So I guess it's been in me all along. Just probably I got the tag when I started doing work at FIDA. And even my friends would look at me and say, "Hey, is that you?" But it's about putting a point across about something that you believe in. Okay, I can't hear you, Peter.
Oh, I apologize. It's interesting that you mentioned your work, around FIDA. And some of the perceptions that people have of FIDA, there's all sorts of narratives existing out there. And at the same time, you will find a lot of different views on feminism among women themselves. I think that you've talked a little about what feminism is, but what is that controversy? What is that about? Would you be able to talk a little about that?
Actually, now I'm going to sound like a true feminist. It's a male, conspiracy to keep women down. No, but seriously, I think it's just because of misconception. When people don't understand something, they would want as much as possible to distance themselves from it. So yes, I've had some women say, I'm not a feminist and don't call me one. But that's just because of the misconception around some of the stands that feminists will take, like around the right to choose when to have children, if to have children. So some people feel a bit uncomfortable about those discussions around termination of pregnancy and would feel, I don't want to be associated with that. That's not African, or that's not what I want to be perceived as, or I don't want to be seen as a man hater. But feminists are not male haters, And what I would say about people's perception about FIDA is that, and the work that FIDA does is so crucial. But when you're in that position, you get exposed to so much pain that women go through domestic violence, through just not being taken care of, being abused, that, people will not take you seriously unless you're very serious about those issues. And at the time when FIDA unfortunately got a negative tagline, it was necessary for that organization to do that work in that way, in terms of trying as much as possible to get people take parental responsibility. But now we're reaping the benefits of work of organizations like FIDA, because now in the Constitution, there's equality in marriage, there's provisions that say that, a child is still going to be respected regardless of whether the parents are married or not. And all that came about because of that work. So people will have, unfortunately, different perceptions because of things that have happened in the past. But definitely the organization has evolved. It does a lot of mediation work these days for families in conflict. But the pain and the agony that you see that women go through definitely makes you a bit jaded in terms of your view about family life, definitely. But people's view about feminists and women saying they don't want to be feminists, it's because of misconception, unfortunately. And I think those are some of the things we try to do, that, they are young women who are feminists and who have children and who are mothers and who are wives. And, we're not male haters, male bashers, but we actually want to just see that there is equality.
Thank you. It's good. You talked about your work with FIDA, and we're gonna, I think, get into what you're doing right now. But I know that Elvis Elvis Mogeni, you had a question around professional work. Elvis?
Yes, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. Yes, can hear you.
All right. Now, my question was, Grace, your professional experience is quite impressive, yet you're still young. And in short, I'd like you to tell us more about your journey as a human rights activist lawyer, and your governance and democracy work.
Okay. Well, I started off, I would say, in this sector in 2000. When I started off an internship at ICJ Kenya, the Kenyan section of the International Commission of Jurists. And I really just happened upon it, the internship. And through that work, I really realized that this is what I wanted to do for a good part of my future life. in terms of, we were working on a program that focused on building the capacity of the judiciary then. And if you look back 2000, the judiciary was weak. It didn't have issues of independence were not within the judiciary. It had challenges in terms of funding. And so I was working on a program that was seeking to strengthen the judiciary. Through that work, I really got a very strong interest in human rights and democracy work, because we're able to see the benefit of having a judiciary that is free and independent on everyday Kenyans' lives. And that propelled me to think that I wanted to stay within the sector. I did that till about 2003, and I had an opportunity to work with eminent Commonwealth jurists who came, judges from South Africa. There's a lady judge who was in the South African Constitutional Court, Yvonne Mokgoro, Honorable Yvonne Mokgoro, and she came, and being able to interact with her and women of her caliber actually made me feel that, you know, I was in the right sector. From there, then I got an opportunity to work with the Law Society of Kenya. I remember I was very, very shocked when they asked me if I would take up that position, because I felt, you know, it was a very big job being the deputy secretary, and I was relatively young. And I think what helped me actually take that up was that my former boss at ICJ, John Hare, had actually also done that job. And I remember I spoke to him and he said, you know, you can do it. Why can't you do it? And that was very interesting. I got to meet a lot of interesting Kenyans when I was at the Law Society. Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi was my boss. He was a very good boss, despite people's perception of him. I got to meet the Attorney General, the former Attorney General Amos Wako, the current Attorney General. So just having that opportunity to work with lawyers like Haron Dubi, Rachel Omamo, you know, was very, very instrumental in how I wanted to shape the rest of my career. I did that for a number of years. I also had an opportunity to work with leading lights like George Kegoro was my boss for a number of years, a great inspiration. And at that point then, ICJ came knocking and they needed me to go and work on an Africa program. And, you know, I had enjoyed my time at ICJ and I really wanted to now focus, work at the African level, you know, and this was around 2006. And I thought, okay, this is a good move. So I did work in Africa. I was focusing on human rights, mostly in Southern Africa. I also then had a good opportunity to work with lawyers within the region. I worked with amazing lawyers in Zambia on a death penalty case. In Zimbabwe, I worked with lawyers on the Morgan Changirai case. So also that exposure, you know, really made me feel that I needed to do a lot more reading and exposure in some of these things. At that time, Zimbabwe was going through a very difficult time. There was a lot of clampdown in Zimbabwe, and just seeing the pain that the civil society activists had in seeing their country go down, because that's when Zimbabwe started going down, was it was really touching. And I wanted to be able to continue to do this work for as long as I possibly could. At that point, then I got an opportunity to work with Coalition on Violence Against Women. And I was working as the deputy coordinator and advocacy manager. That was also a very good opportunity. I think I've been very fortunate in the organizations that I've worked with, because I've worked in organizations that are highly professional and do focus on changing Kenyans' lives. So that was also very traumatic as well, because I was working with sexual violence victims at Kenyatta National Hospital, and these are really women and girls who are very poor, who come and have been violated in the most brutal manner, and they're looking for justice. And at that point you feel so frustrated, because there's very little that you can do for them. Would have rape victims who had been raped 2 months ago, who had been raped even if it's a week ago, but all the evidence had been washed away, they had thrown away the clothes, and that frustration made me feel that this is something that I really needed to do more about, being able to be able to assist them. And just it kept on reinforcing that I was where I needed to be at that particular time in my life. And that's when the post-election violence broke out, and we saw what happened in our country, and the CIPEV Commission was set up. So also working then with the victims of sexual violence at that time, it kept on, I think my entire journey kept on reinforcing the need for me to work in this sector to try and make Kenya a better place. Completed my tour of duty there, and then got an opportunity to work at FIDA, which for me was also then amazing. Did that for about 2-3 years, different positions, and then left end of last year to Uraia, where I am now, which is the National Civic Education Program. And it's like I'm back home now. I'm back to governance work per se, and a lot of people wonder why I made the move, and they would feel, well, FIDA has a bigger profile, but I wasn't looking for fame, I wasn't looking for a profile. I wanted to go where I could make a bigger impact, and at Uraia I'm able to do that because we work with very many organizations throughout the country, and it was a time for me to have some sort of reflection in terms of where women's rights was going in Kenya. I think by the end of last year, I was very disappointed with the way our country had viewed women and had viewed issues of affirmative action. And I needed a break, to let fresh blood come in, fresh ideas, because a point reaches when you realize you're recycling the old ideas, and you need more people, younger people with more energy to come up. So I hope I did mentor a few young people to be able to, take up those other positions and, go on to different things where I can at least have an opportunity to travel more within Kenya. And at least Uraia gives me that opportunity. Yeah.
And it's interesting. You're saying that you left it for young people, and Irene Mutile actually does have a question specifically around that area. Irene, are you there? Did we lose Irene? Irene Mutile? I think we've lost have we lost Irene? Oh, but Kimani looks like he is back. Kimani Nyoike, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Would you please go ahead? I know that it is an area you wanted to explore.
Yeah. As defined by the Kenyan Constitution. Oh, sorry. Bad man.
Yes.
Hello, Grace.
Hi, Kimani. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. As defined by the Kenyan Constitution, you achieved so much while still very young, from what I've been reading about you. And what would you like to tell Kenyan women who'd like to look up to what you've been doing?
I think I still feel I have so much more that I need to achieve. There's a lot that I haven't been able to do that I want to do. I don't think I've written enough, and that's something that I want to do a lot more. And also a lot more mentoring that probably I haven't been able to do. But to your specific question, to Kenyan women, what I would say is the sky is the limit. You only put boundaries for yourself. And if you truly believe that, then no one else is putting boundaries for you. And what I always feel is that we, as women, unfortunately, because of how we've been socialized, we make excuses as to why we're not excelling. We shortchange ourselves a lot. So, for instance, you'll second guess yourself. Should I really apply for that job? Am I good enough? What will they say? How will they treat me? And for me, I just feel, men don't think like that. Men don't think, are they going to say bad things about me? Of course, they're going to say bad things about you, but go for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? And, just being able to, I think women need to be able to realize that they have to push themselves for what they want. And more often than not, men will respect you more when you speak your mind instead of trying to always be complacent or be a flower girl and not ruffle feathers, because people who change this world, women who change this world, are not viewed as in the straight sense of the word, good girls, that sort of a thing. But as long as you stand for what you believe in and you know what you're doing is right, you shouldn't be told otherwise by anyone. As long as it's according to your principles, it's in line with what your God or your religion says, and you know you're doing the right thing, just go for it. Let nothing hold you back. And especially for young women, I would say, be very clear in terms of what you want, your principles, your minimums. There's some, minimums. You're not going to go past certain things. You're not going to allow yourself to be treated in a certain way, and stick by it. And there are times you're going to have to say no to jobs, to positions, to things you're being offered. Say no and walk out of there with your dignity intact. You won't, probably live in the best places in Nairobi or drive the best car, but you do it on your own sweat, and go for it. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, No, so go for it. Yeah.
So the message to young girls out there is go for it. And I guess it would probably be the same for young men. That
yes.
Not to be seen to be discriminated.
Hey, are you seeing this conspiracy? Because he asked me young women, and now you're making it seem like I'm only talking. Hey. Yes,
well, it's how these conversations are going these days. There is there is the Maendeleo ya Wanaume, I think it's called. We can go into a whole lot of that conversation, but I know that Modesta Ndubi had a question. Modesta, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead with your question, please.
Okay. Hi, Grace.
Hi.
I want to take you back a little bit and ask about Uraia. Currently, you're the executive director of Uraia, and would you kindly tell Kenyans more about Uraia, what Uraia does? Yes.
Okay. So Uraia is also known as the National Civic Education Program. We are a Kenyan-owned and Kenyan-led trust. The work that we do is really to facilitate organizations throughout the country to be able to carry out civic education work. So we work through organizations so that they can be able to help Kenyans understand the Constitution, help Kenyans understand issues around elections, the judiciary, minority, and people who are marginalized, what their rights are. So Uraia is more of a facilitating organization. We do not implement a lot of things directly. We rather work through partners. So currently we have about 57 organizations that we partner with in all 47 counties. And we also have civic educators who have deployed throughout the entire country. So each county has a minimum of about 6 civic educators who we have trained, we have resourced, we have been able to enable them to pass on education around the Constitution to ordinary Kenyans. And we develop a lot of materials as well for use of Kenyans because we are education based. So we have been able to simplify issues around devolution for Kenyans to understand. We really, I would say, we work around ensuring that we have an informed and empowered citizenry, because we want Kenyans to have enough information and therefore the ability to engage with governance issues. So hopefully through this education, people will be able to engage their county governments, they'll be able to know what are their rights and also their responsibilities. So we're not just about telling people haki yako, but also what are your responsibilities when it comes to the Constitution, your civic duty, what you need to do as Kenyans. So that's Uraia, basically the leading civic education organization in Kenya.
And just a follow-up question. Do you think Uraia has actually achieved this mandate of civic education and matters devolution? How far are you, or have you achieved, has it impacted the ordinary Mwananchi?
I think we have come a long way, but there's still a long way that we need to go, because there's still parts of this country where people don't even understand what is within the constitution. People have not been able to understand the principles of devolution. So we recognize that we have come a long way from 2000, because that's when we started this work. Now you have young people talking about Katiba, you'll have people talking about devolution, but we haven't gotten to the level whereby people actually understand these key principles to a point where they can hold their governor or their senator accountable. So we have a long road ahead of us. We don't see civic education as a one-off event. It's not a start-stop sort of a thing. It's a long-term investment that we're putting in. And we hope through civic education, people's values will also be changed. So issues of corruption, will be addressed. Issues of greed that we have in this society will be addressed. Issues of people just even respecting traffic laws will be addressed, because people understand that there are certain values that we need to have and to live by to be able to coexist in this country. So we don't cheat ourselves that we have achieved much. We have achieved quite a bit, but we still have a very, very long road ahead of us. And we hope that, ordinary Kenyans will be able to understand the key principles within the Constitution, will be able to see it living and breathing through their ordinary lives. That's really what we want Kenyans to be able to understand as Uraia.
Okay, and I have the last question with regards to Uraia, but this time as an individual. How have you impacted the Wanjiko as an individual?
In terms of impacting the Wanjiko as an individual, if you look at the last elections, we tried to ensure that people knew how to vote. People knew that actually there's voting going on. People were able to understand the principles that they needed to look at when it comes to looking or electing a leader. So issues of integrity, issues of leadership, what do you want to see in a leader? So in terms of the actual impact on an ordinary Kenyan's life, I think definitely the fact that we did have high voter turnout, we didn't relatively have very high number of spoiled votes or rejected ballots, is also an indication that we have impacted Kenyans' lives. Now, moving forward, we hope that with devolution, we will be able to explain and help Kenyans understand that devolution is not going to be a quick fix. It's not going to solve all our problems. It's not going to immediately make things better. We have to manage our expectations as Kenyans when it comes to issues around the principles of devolution. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do for people to understand. It's going to be a long road. There's certain things that are going to take a long time to happen. It doesn't mean that we compromise, but it just means that we have to be able to understand what we're trying to achieve in the long term. Successes of devolution, we're not going to see them probably in the next 5 or 10 years. We're talking about the successes being seen probably by our children, but we have to start the hard work now.
Thanks. So there has been movement in terms of in terms of the work that we're doing, and yes, there has been some how shall I call it? There is an impact on Wanjiko. There is a question that has come through from one of the people watching the Hangout. Her name is Sophie Ngoki. The question is that is Grace, you have been at the forefront in advocating for the rights of women. Where would you say Kenya is? Where would you say Kenya is at on this? And more so the commitment in defending the rights of women as enshrined in the Constitution.
Okay, if you look at our legal framework, we have progressed, compared to where we were pre-2010. The Constitution actually does guarantee a lot of rights for women. The unfortunate thing is that when it comes to implementation and when it comes to interpretation, our judiciary has let us down. Parliament has also let us down. We do have more women within Parliament, but still we do not have the appreciation around the affirmative action principles in the Constitution. So if you look at it from a scale of 1 to 10, I would say actually we're at 5, because even ordinary Kenyans' appreciation of the need for women in leadership, the need for women to be able to have the level field made for them to be able to actually participate equally has not actually happened. So we still have a very long road to go. What we have going for us is a constitution, like I said, but the ruling by the Supreme Court towards the end of last year was a big blow to the women's movement and was a big blow to affirmative action in Kenya. And I think that's some of the concerns that within the movement have been there, that there is not a genuine appreciation or goodwill when it comes to women issues within our country. And therefore, we have our work cut out for us in terms of women's rights in Kenya.
I apologize. So the second part of that, of what Sophie is asking, what Sophie Ngugi is asking is, even as we look, and I think you've touched on this, but just to highlight this, is looking at the commitment on issues of women, and specifically in addressing sexual violence as well. Would you say it's the same? Is it changing?
I mean, just looking at what has happened recently over the last couple of weeks, definitely there is very little commitment when it comes to addressing issues of sexual violence and sexual violence touching on both men and women. If you look at implementation of the Sexual Offences Act, we haven't seen a direct and purposed work within the judiciary to have judgments that actually have a big impact in this area. And this can be actually blamed on poor prosecution, poor investigation by the police. And unfortunately, that's what is coming to the fore now, that you can have young men violating a woman, violating a young girl, who are then punished by slashing grass. That shows you that the community or the society does not appreciate women as a key component of this society, and therefore we have a very long way to go. Like I said, in Kenya we're very good in terms of having legal frameworks or legal protection, but implementation is always a challenge, and I think those are some of the things that we have to address. But you can only address that by addressing the core issue, which is respect for women, respect for children, respect for members within the society, to the point whereby it is agreed and acceptable and acknowledged that it is unacceptable to violate someone's rights, whether they're a person with disability or a 14-year-old girl. So our society is the problem. Our society needs to come to that realization that it is not okay to rape a girl and then have the perpetrator slash the grass. We should have all been in complete uproar about that, and not wait for women rights organizations. Where are they? Can they hold a demonstration? No, we should have been all appalled by it, to the point where no policeman ever in Kenya can ever think about doing that again.
And it's good, it's an interesting area, Grace, for when you talk about the police and what we've seen happen with the Busia rape, and yes, I think that what you've talked about is key. That it's a societal problem that requires that the society in its entirety, says no to this. So specifically looking at Uraia and what you talked about, civic education, is there something more that the civil society can do with Wanjiko on issues of sexual violence? What can the civil society do to support and to ensure that Wanjiko understands their role in as far as sexual violence is concerned?
I think I look at it differently. I look at it from the point of view that Wanjiko needs to become civil society. Wanjiko needs to be the one who is involved in these issues, to say, I don't have to wait for an organization to come and tell me that what happened to the lady in Busia is wrong. I don't have to wait for that. I don't have to wait for someone to hold a press conference to tell me that it's wrong for a father to rape a 1-month-old baby. Society, Wanjiko needs to become civil society. She needs, or he needs, to feel that pain, to say, I'm not going to stand around and let this happen. I hope, and I think Uraia hopes, that we can grow this society to a point whereby each and every individual Kenyan feels that responsibility, feels that they have a role to play in ensuring that we have a better country. So that the reason why
how do we transition, given that and I think what you've said is critical, that when Chico needs to be able, I guess, is saying that when Chico needs to be able to take on her responsibility as as a citizen of the country, as far as these things are concerned. I'm just wondering, what do we do in the transitory period? What can the existing civil society do in that period?
I think as we go towards that ideal situation, civil society just needs to be able to clarify the issues where violations occur, be able to help Kenyans understand what laws have been violated, what international treaties have been violated, what options are there for people who find themselves who have been violated in terms of legal redress, reparations, whether it's issues of compensation, being able to pursue justice. So that's the role that civil society needs to play right now, highlighting the failures of institutions when it comes to their failure to actually ensure access to justice, or when they fail to actually protect, because the state has a duty to protect persons from violations by others. So civil society's role really right now should be highlighting some of those failures, but more so working on putting in place responsive mechanism, preventive mechanisms which have been worked on to ensure that we can prevent some of these things happening. So it's a lot of work cut out for civil society to be able to get the society or Kenyans to a level whereby they understand what do we need to do to prevent, what do we need to do to respond when a violation like this actually occurs.
Thank you very much. And I think what you're talking about, in terms of access to justice, in terms of accountability and holding, the social service delivery mechanisms of the institutions and government to account, becomes a critical point in the fight, not just around sexual violence, but maybe looking at that and looking at access to justice and the processes and administration of justice, and ensuring that justice is delivered. I know that Kimani Nyoike, you had an area of exploration for Grace. Go ahead. Your microphone is off, Kimani, so we cannot hear you.
Hello. Hi.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Yes.
Can I skip for a second? Can I skip for a sec?
Kimani, I'm not sure I understand.
Hello?
Yes.
I'm asking for a few seconds.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. But I do see that we are joined by Caroline Nyamu. Caroline, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry, my internet is really bad, so it keeps dropping off.
That's excellent. Actually, we can hear you. Would you have a question or an area of exploration for Grace this afternoon?
I'll pass for now. I'll give her a little bit of time, a bit of real to harm herself, and then I'll come back in.
I don't think we will allow that to happen, really. I think that we are doing a good job of, having some good conversation and actually beginning to understand much more of who Grace is. You did miss the fact that she enjoys suits. Maybe you want to borrow a copy of that, from her. Kim, are you ready? Kimani Nyoike, are you there? Are you ready? I guess he's still, these technological difficulties on his end. We do have Sharon Langat also joining us. Sharon, would you have a question for Grace? I don't know if she can hear me actually. Okay. As Kim
Can you hear me?
yes, you can hear you,
Can you hear
Sharon.
me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Actually, I wanted to ask, coming back to civic education. Sorry to take you back, Grace. Actually, I've met you. You came and did a civic education in Korogocho. Do you remember?
Yes, yes. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. So I wanted to ask, is there has Uraya done any more in informal settlements? Because I still hear complaints in around Eastlands where I work that there hasn't been enough civic education. Like we're trying to do what we can as in Nuka, but is there any more outreaches that you guys are doing in informal settlements around the country? Because I know they're everywhere. So.
Yes, in terms of being able to reach out, especially in those areas where the need is so great, we're trying as
Yeah.
much as possible to get our civic educators, like I said, who are
Okay.
in all the 47 counties, to be able to map where they've been able to actually go and look for other groups to be able to go and give that education. The model that we use is that the civic educator speaks to a group of people for a concerted period of time, who then can go and give that information, sort of a ripple kind of effect. Now, that might not work instantly because it will take a period of time, but we're hoping that the little resources that we have can be able to actually get that moving. Some of the things that we can be able to do moving forward is to partner with institutions that feel there is a completely dire need in a particular area for a particular issue, and then be able to develop materials that can then be used in that particular context. So I think one thing that we acknowledge is that we're not everywhere, we're not doing as much as we can or should, just because of the limit of resources in terms of human resource, financial resources as well. But we're trying to see how best to use as many modalities that we can to be able to get the information out. So the thing about civic education is that it doesn't happen in an instant. Someone will go for one training, they will not be able to appreciate maybe the principles of devolution. It takes a concerted amount of time. So our model actually focuses on ensuring that you have a group who completely understand the issues, as opposed to a touch and go sort of response. It's what we are working with now, and we hope that it can be able to actually have an impact in the long run.
Okay. Let me add to that question. What resources have you distributed? One, the mapping exercise. Do you get access to that information, as far as where you guys have reached when it's done? And then two, what resources have you distributed already in the informal settlements in Nairobi, for instance? Like.
Okay, so in terms of the areas that we've already covered, that information is available because for Nairobi, we have 6 civic educators. Now, that's a drop in the ocean compared to the expansive nature of Nairobi.
Right.
But our civic educators are able to specifically let us know which groups they've had an interaction with, because they go to already formed groups where they can be able to give that information. And that information is available from our offices, so that someone can be able to see. We've worked with, whether it's a sports group in Kangware or a women's group in Korogosho, that sort of information is there. The challenge that is always there is that you don't have enough what you'd call feet on the ground or foot soldiers on the ground to be able to cover every area to the level that you want. And that's why we try to, as much as possible, partner with organizations that can actually then help us to get this information out. And that's why it's key also for us to have material developed that can then be used by others to reach as many people as possible. Yeah.
Okay, because the feedback I usually get is that it's very important for even your civic educators in Nairobi to work very closely with youth groups. They said, why can't these people just hire us? We'll distribute the resources for them. Not hire, but you can like use the youth groups because they have the closest access to the people there. Like, yeah, working with organizations is good, but they always say, no, work with the youth leaders in that group, in that area. They'll, and elderly community leaders and things like that to reach these people, rather than having your civic educator being crippled exactly by lack of capacity. They can be their capacity. You know what I mean?
Yes, and
Yeah.
what I would say is that some of our civic educators are youth leaders, and an opportunity will come up, I hope sometime early next year, whereby we will be actually trying to see if we can get more civic educators out, and also other youth groups, organizations to come and be on board in terms of the Uraia work that we do. So opportunities are there. We also, as much as possible, have to exercise caution in terms of the groups that we're engaging. You know, we're not able to resource everybody at the same time, so we have to be able to be sure that we are resourcing people who have the capacity to go out and actually want to actually do this work. So what I would say for those groups that are interested, they need to look out for when we do our call for proposals and when we do our call for civic educators, and then they just apply, they'll go through the process, and we see how we can be able to work through them. Alternatively, they can align themselves or become affiliated to an organization that we partner with, and then be able to receive resources through that organization to carry out the work. But like I said, we are very aware that we have limited resources in terms of personnel, financial, and it's to try and, as much as possible, build synergy with different partners to be able to see what they can do. So we have synergies that we've built, for instance, with transition authority coordinators throughout the country, and trying to enable them to carry out also civic education, because that's what they're supposed to do, and enable county governments to roll out their civic education programs, because it's the government actually that's supposed to be doing civic education work. So we're trying to look at things from the big picture kind of perspective. What will be more sustainable in the long run? It's much better that you have a county that has a civic education program, a curriculum, and understand that they need to budget for that work. Then you'll see more impact and more traction in that work. But we're always open to more ideas in terms of how we can improve our work. And, you know, just drop us an email, come to the office, you know, tell us what you're thinking so that we can see how we can be able to respond to some of those concerns.
Okay. My last question is, have you guys printed more constitutions? Because when I was doing community forums, I needed some about a month, 2 ago, but you guys were not. You guys were out of constitutions. Do you have a stock that I can pick up?
Now?
Yeah, even tomorrow. You're right down the street.
I know. I think you could be able to get a few, maybe not more than 100, probably not. We've just come back from the counties, so we distributed constitutions throughout all the 47 counties for officials of the county government. So our stocks might be low, but we're always looking to see how we can reprint. So now that I know, we'll make sure that we do a reprint, and you'll be the first people to get a good bunch.
Okay, I have many witnesses, so I'm going to write an email.
Yes, good.
That's it.
I guess, you know, there is quite a number of people that are doing. Thank you so much, Sharon Langat, for your participation. You know, Grace, as you're talking about civic education, it seems that one of the really hot commodities is the Constitution. So I guess that Uraia Trust does have some work to do there. Kimani Nyoike, you're back.
Yes, I'm back.
Oh, great. You had a question for Grace.
Yes, I do have one question, something that has been kind of troubling me for a while. You joined Uraia at a time when there were threats which are still happening around the organizations and activities that Uraia supports. Has this had any impact on your personal safety and security?
I think as a human rights worker, as someone who's been in this sector for a few years now, one of the things that we're always conscious about is being extra careful all the time, and not being complacent. So in terms of ensuring you look at issues of personal safety, which includes keeping personal information to yourself, in terms of your movement, in terms of how much you expose yourself as well. It's one of the basics that any human rights defender has to be exposed to be able to understand. I would say that definitely you try to be as careful as you possibly can be. You can't always be 100% careful, because that will mean you lock yourself up. I don't know where it's safe these days. But what we try to do as much as, or what I try to do personally, is you need to be paranoid, you know, as a human rights defender. That's one of the things they teach you. That's the best way to live. Be extremely paranoid, so that you can protect yourself more. But I think what's unfortunate is that ordinary Kenyans don't understand the threats that human rights defenders face, or they think we're exaggerating, or they think, no, but you have a job, that's why you're doing it, you chose to do it. Some of us do this work because we really believe in this work. It's not an 8 to 5, it's not a salary that we're looking for. It's because of the passion that we have for this work. And we face a lot of threats that are veiled, that are outright threats, in terms of your phone violations and all that. We try to just, you're an ordinary Kenyan. You're just trying to do the best that you can do with the little that you have, and with the little knowledge that you have. So definitely, there are concerns for human rights defenders, especially now in Kenya. And, I think the best thing for Kenyans to be able to do is to, as much as possible, be your brother's keeper, and see how, as much as possible, you can be able to protect the people around you.
Well, Grace, sort of related to that is why human rights defenders? Why the threat? Yeah. What is that about?
I think sometimes you sit and you wonder, because you feel that you're actually doing a service to Kenya, so why should anyone be threatened by that? But if you look even at the history in terms of human rights work throughout the world, if you look at, even in Eastern Europe, what has happened in Ethiopia, what has happened in Egypt or in Arab states, for those who stand up against oppression, more often than not, they become targets themselves, because people in power do not want an opposing voice to come up and speak, and do not want any opposition and feel this person is gaining a lot of power or traction, or is making people think in a different way. So I guess for people in those positions, they would want to muzzle that voice, and you muzzle it through threats, you muzzle it through actual hurting people, or that sort of a thing. And it's very unfortunate, because what this initiative is trying to do, we're ordinary Kenyans who just want to work for the betterment of this country. We're not looking to destroy the state. We're not looking to make anybody's life more miserable. We're trying to make Kenyans' lives much better. So it's unfortunate, but it's not peculiar to Kenya. You see that the world over, and I think that's the unfortunate thing about human nature.
It's interesting. I know I'm about to milk this, but you've talked about threats, and then you've used an interesting word, given the context that we are in, the word muzzle. And you've used it, and then we are talking about the Miscellaneous Amendment Bill of 2013. Could you talk a little about what are the implications of the Miscellaneous Amendment Bill 2013 in its entirety?
Okay, well, it's huge. The Miscellaneous Amendment,
if you can.
Yeah, well, I can. The Miscellaneous Amendment Bill touches on very many different amendments to very many different laws. That's why I said that's what I meant when I said it's huge. It touches on amendments to the vetting of judges and magistrates. It has amendments to do with the Youth Council. But I think what you're specifically talking about is the amendments to the Public Benefits and Organization Act. Now, those amendments touch on various aspects of the Public Benefits and Organizations Act, but in particular, what is of most concern is the amendments that have been introduced with regards to funding that go to public benefit organizations. Now, for people to understand what public benefit organizations are, PBOs, in short, these are organizations that were formally registered under the NGO Coordination Act. So NGOs that have been registered under that act are now supposed to come under the ambit of the PBO Act. Now, when you say, and the amendment says that funding would be limited to 15% from external donors, what this simply means is that you're expecting Kenyan organizations to be funded by Kenyans up to about 85%. Now, in a country that has high levels of poverty, that is still struggling with issues of democracy, you're essentially saying that you do not want to have NGOs in Kenya anymore. You do not want to have NGOs working in the area of water. You don't want to have NGOs working in the area of health, in the area of dealing with issues of malaria, dealing with issues of governance. You basically want to ensure that these organizations that are non-governmental governmental organizations cannot exist. And that's why there's such an uproar towards this issue, because why would the government, because this is coming from the government, why would the government want to limit funding to organizations in Kenya, considering the level of funding that this government itself does get from external donors? Now, when you try to even limit issues of funding, you're limiting issues of association, you're touching on issues of employment of people, large numbers of people who are employed. We have over 5,000 or 7,000 organizations operating in Kenya. So what are you saying even to issues about the economy of this country?
I think the industry, the sector is employing something upwards of at least 240,000 people on full-time work. And I think we are talking approximately 152 billion Kenya shillings in one financial year. So we it is 15% of Kenya's economy is from the civil society and the PBO and the PBOs. But I think to contextualize this a little bit more within the context of the civic education work that Uraia Trust is doing and what you're involved in, Grace, how will these amendments affect Wanjiko?
They will affect.
Should they pass the way it is? How will these amendments affect Wanjiko?
They'll affect all aspects of Wanjiko's life, from her being able to access ARVs, free ARVs if she's HIV positive, from her being able to access mosquito nets if she's living, for instance, in Nyanza, from her being able to access free legal advice when she goes to a legal aid clinic in Kisumu at a feeder office, from her being able to access food rations from an organization that like WHO or food, the organizations that work on food programs in this country. Every particular aspect, from the education for her children, for schools that have subsidized education, maybe they're given books by NGOs or by organizations outside the country. It will affect every particular aspect of Wanjiko's life. It will affect her access to information, her access to issues around governance, what's happening in this country. It is such an unfortunate amendment that has been dreamt up by people who have no reason to fear organizations that have focused on ensuring the betterment of Kenyans' lives. I think it's so tragic that we are being dragged to equate ourselves to countries like Ethiopia, yet Kenya has such a progressive constitution, and this fear that people have that they want to oppress others, is completely off the chart, that it's so unexplainable. I mean, sorry, I get emotional about some of these things because I just can't understand it, yeah.
And I think within the same miscellaneous amendment bill, there's something to do with scrapping the transition authority, and it also is going to affect devolution.
I think the most unfortunate thing about where Kenya is going to now is that if someone doesn't do what you want them to do or doesn't speak how you want them to speak, you want to get rid of them. With a stroke of a pen, let's disband this commission, let's remove these commissioners, let's remove civil society, let's stop the media, let's regulate the media. I think it's very unfortunate that kind of thinking or that kind of way of dealing with conflict or issues or dealing with any dissent. We need to be a society that is open to be able to say, let's get to the table. What are these people upset about? Why do we want the media to pay fines of up to, a journalist paying up to 20 million shillings? Why do we, why do we want to disband the TA? How much work has gone into the thinking and the rationale behind having devolution and having a transition authority? There were months and a lot of research was done on this issue. You have to have a mechanism that assists you to transit from where we were to where we want to go. You can't solve that problem by saying we're not happy with the TA, so let's disband it. And then what? What more are we going to disband? Are we going to disband Parliament because we're upset about them and their salaries? Are we going to disband the Judiciary?
Some of us wish we could disband Parliament.
Yes, but we have to. I know there are many of you, but we have to respect institutions, and that's the problem we're having right now. We must respect institutions that are there. And if there are challenges with the institutions, reform the institution, work towards that. But don't wholesale throw the baby and the bathwater and say, let's sink or swim. We can't be that kind of a nation that we have a Kenya National Human Rights Commission that has no commissioners currently.
Yes.
We have a National Commission on Integration and Cohesion that has no commissioners. They're not doing anything. Yet we have good ideas. There was a good idea behind us needing to have cohesion, us needing to have a National Human Rights Commission. Why are we going backwards so drastically? As someone said, I think on Twitter, in high speed, we're going the reverse way. It's very disheartening, I think, when I think I've done over the years for us to have these institutions, for us to now wake up and say we don't want it, we're unhappy because of one or two decisions. We need to be mature enough, to be objective enough to say this is the issue, remove the politics from it, this is how I'm going to deal with it. But this rash behavior that we have and trying to chest thump and show our power and say we're going to then do 1, 2, 3 and disband all of you, and it's very unfortunate, I think, for this country.
And Grace, you speak so passionately about this, and and there are serious issues, and I think that what you're bringing forward are critical issues that we need to think about as a country. We need to engage with. We need to create a different kind of consciousness, if you will, or transform our consciousness to actually be much more patriotic and to put our country forward and put not the letter and the spirit of the Constitution forward. And as you're speaking, and given that this is the series of our series of Enemy of the State. What would you say? Would you say you're an enemy of the state or a hero for Wanjiku?
I'm just an ordinary Kenyan trying to do what I can to make this Kenya a better place. If that makes me an enemy of the state, if that's the definition, okay.
So be it.
So be it. But I think civil society actors, those who are genuine, because we do have ingenuous people amongst us, we just want to make this country a better place, and we just want to ensure that we give everybody an equal chance and equal opportunity to be able to thrive in this society.
Great. We are coming towards the end of this particular hangout. Would you have any last words, any parting shot for those that are listening? You could make an appeal for a TV series, a new one that maybe you haven't been able to watch, or whoever would want to take you on for swimming. Coming from Hospital Hill, I'm sure you're a fantastic swimmer. But whether you've got sort of a parting shot for those that are watching and those that are engaging with us on Facebook, those that are engaging with us on Twitter and on YouTube.
I think my parting shot, especially just making the assumption that it's more young people who would engage with this sort of platform, is as young people, we need to be more tolerant to each other. We need to be more respectful of Kenya's past and Kenya's history, so that we can be able to secure Kenya's future. And we need to care about where our country is going, but you have to start by caring about yourself and where you're going. So my appeal to young people is, as much as possible, ensure that you respect yourself, respect your leaders, respect God, or your whatever higher being that you believe in. But most importantly, let us be tolerant to each other, and let us be able to hear dissenting views without necessarily sending off that negative tweet or really being very violent to each other on social media. Let us think before we type, and be more tolerant. That would be my parting shot.
tolerance, of divergent view, getting people around the table, being able to talk. You've also talked about equality as an issue that you're quite passionate about, and maybe you know, a feminist reloaded, not the not the traditional, you know, sort of male bashing, you know, whatever it is that people conceive feminism to be, which actually it is not, and you know, as how you've explained it. And unfortunately, we have run out of time for this particular hangout. Ladies and gentlemen, we were hanging out this afternoon with Grace Maingi. Grace is the Executive Director of Uraia Trust, and the largest civic education organization working in Nairobi, working in, you know, with approximately 57 organizations across all the counties in Kenya. And just 1 or 2 years above the threshold of youth, as defined in our constitution. You know, somebody will do their math. But
where have you added? Just one.
I have added.
Yes.
It's what? How many are they?
Just one.
Oh, it's one. Oh, I deeply apologize. Just 1 year above the constitutional definition of youth here in Kenya, so has actually been able to work in a lot of different organizations, both internally and externally, a wealth of experience. And, you know, really speaking very passionately about the country, about the work that she does, about the civil society, and the stand that we need to make, a stand for this country. And Grace is among those people that are making a stand, taking a stand for this country. We will be hosting another session of Enemy of the State within a week or so. Please keep it locked on Twitter, Facebook, and other spaces. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at Maskani254. At Maskani254. You can also find us on Facebook. Of course, you can find us here on Google Plus. You can find us on Script. You know, if there is an online platform, I'm sure that you can find us. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you at the next Enemy of the State. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.